Okay. Uh, Very chaotic start. Thank you guys for sticking with me. But yeah, definitely use that Q&A feature on Patreon to ask questions because I've been trying to figure out how to get like stuff from the chat on Patreon to show up on the screen. Um, and now they have a feature for that for Q&As, which is amazing. So that's very, oh no, it didn't work. Oh, I'm sorry, Izzy. I'm just because I know that Izzy can't hear or see anything. So I don't that's so strange. So yeah, if you're able to join us over on Twitch, that would be the only solution I would think because yeah, I YouTube is what it is. Okay, wow. That was the longest preamble in the history of the world. Thank you guys for bearing with me on this. And let's get into some questions. So yeah, definitely come over to the Patreon and leave questions in there if you can. If you're watching this on Twitch and you are a member of Patreon, you can always watch on Twitch and submit questions in the Q&A on Patreon if you want. If you're not like seeing anything. Oh yeah, okay. And someone in Twitch, Fly Cheese says to try a different browser potentially. That is something that I've noticed to be true. Okay, great. Garrett asked a question in the Q&A. Thank you so much, Garrett. Put this up on screen. Fabulous. Okay, so what does great collaboration with an audio engineer look like for you in audio drama production? So, follow-up question for you, Garrett, which is that do you mean engineer when it comes to somebody who's engineering the recording sessions or somebody who is sort of like cleaning up your audio after the fact or somebody who's sound designing a project? Because there's kind of a bunch of different modes that could take. And so I'm curious kind of specifically what you're looking for, if it's sort of during recording or in post-production. Mike, I'm glad you're not driving. Here you are. You can actually see us, which is great. Oh, and Various, very new to Patreon. How do you ask questions in the Q&A? Well, don't worry about being new. Don't apologize because this is an entirely new feature that I have access to as a creator ambassador. And so we're learning together. There should be sort of two tabs up at the top that says chat and Q&A. That's what I see at least on my side. If folks in the chat, if you see something different, help ferry us out. And you can go over to the Q&A tab and ask a question in there and it'll pop up and I'll be able to get it up on screen. I think that's how it works. Okay, yes. Cardinal Mose says that's exactly how it goes. Great. Okay. Fabulous. Okay, so Garrett, yes, all three, but happy to stick with the post-production design angle. Yeah, I mean, when it comes to collaborating with an engineer in recording, that like has more to do with kind of setting expectations and making sure that you know have a really strong production plan and all of that kind of stuff. But when it comes to post-production, what does great collaboration look like? I mean, honestly, one of the things that I think is so important with any kind of collaborator, whether that's like a director, a co-writer, sound designer, composer, artist, whatever. Or Bina alumni gang in the chat. Is that folks who have taken Gabrielle's masterclass? Because that's awesome. He's so good at teaching people. It's incredible. I think with any collaborator, it's incredibly important to have a meeting right off the bat where you really like set expectations with each other. And so usually what I try to do is I, explain how I like to work. I ask them how they like to work. And then one of the most important things that we talk about is I ask them like, how do you like to receive notes? How do you not like to receive notes? So like for me as like a writer or, director, actor or whatever, in any of the creative things that I do, like I love a compliment sandwich, right? Like I want you to tell me what you liked about my script before you kind of tear it apart, right? Like I have a fairly thick skin at this point, but like I still kind of want to be, I'm a squishy little writer. I want to be complimented and be reassured that like what I'm making is not terrible. But I've worked with people who are like, just give it to me straight, no fluff. I don't need the compliment sandwich. I don't need you to tell me what works. I just need to tell you to tell me what doesn't work. And so figuring out thick skin, that must be hard for tattoos. I mean, I only have the one and it was on a very thin skinned part. And my skin was definitely thinner back when I got this. So, you get thick skin with each passing year that you work in a creative industry. So I think like really determining what your notes process is going to look like, if they want written notes, if they want verbal notes, if they want some mix of both, how they want notes. I think especially when it comes to sound, I think one of the really important things to acknowledge, depending on your level of expertise, is that like most people who are hiring a sound designer and working with a sound designer are not sound designers themselves or audio engineers or audio experts. And so I find that most of the sound designers that I work with don't want me to even try to pretend that I know what I'm talking about when it comes to sound. I realized, I don't know why I have my headphones on. It's warm in here and I don't need to hear anything now that everything's set up correctly. So I think that talking to your sound designer very candidly about that, being like, is it helpful for me to talk about things like, for that cool podcaster look, obviously. Well, of course. I mean, yeah, headphones are basically our uniform, but it's warm on my ears. You know, asking how they want to discuss things like mixing notes, right? Like things like, my God, I'm forgetting the terms for these things because because I'm not an expert in these things. But there's like, you know, there's volume, there's left to right direction. There is the main thing that you do when determining the size of a room in audio, which is a word that I'm forgetting. But sometimes it can be helpful to sort of know some of those terms. But more often than not, I find that my sound designer, reverb. Thank you so much. Reverb. Thank you. And yeah, sometimes I'll be like, I don't know if it's the reverb or the volume, but like this room is like feeling too big. I think acknowledging what you don't know, I think even, you know, working with sound designer, they might just want you to say like, this room feels too big for me, or this room feels too cold, or, oh, bye Key Rex, I'm sorry you have to hop off, but you know, you can watch the playback later. I hope you have a good night. And yes, thank you for the reminder to hydrate. So yeah, I think making sure that you are not trying to like pretend like you have more specialized knowledge than you do, because I find that often sort of obfuscates the actual note that you're trying to give if you're trying to give a technical note and you don't have a lot of technical knowledge. So talking to your sound designer about that up front. And then when it comes to kind of the actual process, once you've determined things like expectations, communication, all of that, making sure that they get the scripts before you go into production is really important, because they'll tell you like, and this is again something you would talk about in that first meeting, they would tell you like, I get what you're going for in this scene and I can sound design it, but it's not going to communicate what you think it's going to communicate to the audience. So like, let's maybe brainstorm together a way that you could communicate that better. Or they might say, for this particular scene, I noticed in your scripts that you don't have, you know, dialogue lines for heavy breathing of this character running. Just make sure to actually get those efforts in studio because I'll need them for post-production. Stuff like that, you know, stuff that they'll kind of flag for you that might be a problem during production. And then when it comes to post-production, I think the thing that I find most useful is just having a really like organized notes process. So I offer a sound design notes template at atypicalartist.co/resources. If you go to like production templates, I forget exactly what it's called on the website, you will find one for notes, and you'll see that there's like a column for timestamps, the note itself, and sort of if it's music, SFX, Atmo, dialogue, timing, whatever, you know, and you can kind of obviously make those categories whatever is most useful to you. But I found that I did that for 2008 for the first time. Like I previously had just sort of had like a Google Doc that I sent, and then Google Sheets like introduced these like custom tables and stuff. And so I've now like updated all my templates to have these custom tables, and I love them so much. And so using that with 2008 was amazing, because then Jeffrey could kind of comment on the cells in the spreadsheet and say like, oh, like I see what you're going for, but like, how about this instead? And then I could reply to their comment, and we could kind of have a back and forth in the Google Sheet about the thing. And I could also, you know, when we needed a music cue, I would pull music and drop that in the column for links so that they would have access to that. Same thing with like pickups, you know, and kind of making it very clear like whose responsibility each thing is. I think that can be very helpful. I don't know if that answers your question, Garrett. I hope that is helpful. But yeah, I think just like being like very organized, very upfront, having really clear communication, understanding that like I think the other big thing when it comes to collaborators is that you want to make sure to respect your sound designer's artistry and listen to their expertise. And there are going to be times when you disagree. And so you need to determine, kind of like, okay, like, like you have sort of a kind of veto power where if you think I'm going the wrong direction, like you can tell me that and I'll kind of trust you and you're going to trust that I'm going to trust you. But then ultimately, if you're the showrunner, it is your say. And I'm a big believer in somebody always has to be in charge and the buck always stops somewhere. And so I think just being very, very upfront and saying that to people and saying like, I really want to collaborate with you. I want your input, but like, ultimately, like if there's ever sort of anything that like we are seeing things totally different on, like just to keep things really streamlined, like I'll sort of make the final decision around that. But like I am going to respect your artistic collaboration as much as possible, or as much as, like I'm always going to default to sort of what you think, unless I feel like really, really strongly about something, at which point like we will sort of do what I think, because I have ultimate veto power. There's a better way to frame it. I've done that better before, I think. Oh God, work calls that should have been a text. So real. Yes, been inducted into the unofficial audio mafia at work as a production manager, been able to shadow a ton, but I've been told it's different everywhere. They can get a lot of weird notes. Oh my God, that's okay. So if you're working, and I feel very, very strongly about this. If you are working in like an ecosystem where there are multiple people giving notes, anytime like I'm doing a production for somebody else and I'm sort of the person who's hired the sound designer and is coordinating with them and stuff, no one else that I'm working with has that sound designer's email. Like if I can help it. Like obviously sometimes they'll get their email, but I'm like always very clear of like, okay, big Hollywood studio that has hired me to do this, like you will never directly communicate with the sound designer except for maybe an introductory call. I collate all of the notes and send them on to the sound designer, because then I can rephrase things when executives are kind of being dicks about stuff. And B, I can just delete the notes that I think are bad. And then if, the exec has a problem with that in the future, I'm just very honest with them and being like, yeah, like I didn't pass that on to our sound designer actually, because like I didn't think that was going to work. Most of the time when I do that, when I like delete a note that I think is bad, I never hear about it again, because a lot of people, especially if you're working with like a team of like 8 people who are all giving notes, like a lot of those people are giving notes because they have to justify their salary and they don't actually care and they don't actually feel that strongly about that thing. Of course, then you will find people that you have arguments with and like, you can kind of take those things as they come. Yeah, Charlie says in the Twitch chat, vote systems don't work. You need a buck stops here, executive decision maker. Absolutely. Like even if you sort of have like a collaborative like partner, like it's just you and one other person, you need to determine between the two of you, like, okay, who gets the buck stops here on sound? Who gets that on casting? Who gets that on writing? Who gets that on art? Because like, especially with 2 people or like 3 people, like just a vote is just not going to like lead to good places. Honestly, half those notes they forget about as soon as they gave them to you, I'm sure. Exactly. Yeah, great idea. Not to mention it's just better organization-wise to only be getting those from one place. Exactly. And I can put them in the organized spreadsheet. And that's usually how I frame it to executives of like, I have like a thing that I organize and, want to make sure that everything is like color-coded and like, collated correctly. So like I will be the person who is doing all of the notes. And that's true for like any like writing teams as well. Anything, like anything like that. Like there's just, yes, I love color coding. It's so great. So I'm glad that everybody else is sort of on board with that. That is, that it's just so crucial. Okay. Question from Various here. How would you recommend being okay with suspending disbelief when writing specific things, if that makes sense? For example, fudging some details, real-world facts in a script for the sake of plot. I found I'm better as a listener, but I hold myself to an impossible standard when planning a script/story. This is a great question. Fly cheese in the Twitch chat. Democratic system sucks and rule with an iron fist. Noted. Yeah, I definitely don't advocate for that in like general things, but certainly in creative things, it can be helpful to have the iron fist. Yeah, that's a really, that does make sense as a question. And that's something that I've definitely encountered a lot in writing things like, Break Your Whiskey or New Year's Day or my upcoming Queer Western Desperate Hollow, these things that are like based in a particular time period and therefore like certain things existed or didn't exist or what have you. So I think about this a lot. And I think Yeah, I think the fact that like you say you're better as a listener, like I do think that listeners are willing to forgive a lot. I think the most important thing to remember as a writer, just like generally applying to everything, but that I think is true on this specifically, is that like you are never going to please everybody. And the moment that you stop trying to please everybody, you will live so much more of a peaceful life. Like you can do the most like okay, to take a great example, the Pit, right? Like the Pit has done so much work and like with medical professionals to make it the most medically accurate television show that's ever aired. And it's perfect and I love it and it's my favorite show. And like I have several doctor friends and like there are still things that like they're like, yeah, that's not really right. Yeah, yeah, and yet your dad still finds nitpicks. Exactly. So and like but that's fine. Like none of the doctors that I've talked to about the Pit are like mad that that is the case, because like ultimately I don't think the Pit is communicating anything that's like harmful, right? And like that's kind of an extreme example because obviously like medical stuff you can, you know, what TV and film have done for like CPR as like a concept, I think is maybe not the best. Like in reality, like CPR is not, I mean, first of all, if somebody doesn't have a pulse, you do not do CPR on them. There are other problems that need to be fixed first. CPR can only be effective on like certain sort of like incorrect heartbeats, basically, which now most defibrillators will actually like scan the rhythm and tell you if you can shock them or not. But also like I was talking to one of my best friends here in Seattle is a doctor. And I asked her for stuff all the time. House, on the other hand, he tears to shreds. Yes, absolutely. And also like CPR works like maybe 20 to 30% of the time, like very generously. It is like the way that my friend described it, she was like, here's the thing. If somebody needs CPR, you probably can't make it worse. And so like, yeah, exactly. Yeah, CPR is statistically ineffective, but the few times it does work, oh boy, it's good to have. So like, yeah, when in doubt, do it. I'm not discouraging you from doing CPR. Like still do it. But like I think the standard now is that you don't need to do rescue breaths unless there's an obstructed airway. I think like, yeah, but surprisingly, there's a weird amount of medical accuracy in MASH, apparently, at least considering the time and genre. Yeah, so my doctor friend says that that's the only medical show she's ever watched and liked, because she's like, it's obviously not like necessarily trying to be the most medically accurate thing in the world, but it is pretty accurate, and also it is true. And so that I think is the important distinction to make: is something perfectly accurate or is it true? And I think that what MASH and the Pit have in common is like, sure that there are things in there that are like not medically accurate, but they are true. They capture the experience of being a doctor in a way that like House and Grey's Anatomy simply do not. I mean, like House is Sherlock Holmes. It's not trying to capture being a doctor. Grey's Anatomy is a soap about people making out in supply closets. It's not supposed to be a, you know, real depiction of being a doctor. But like, yeah, like MASH, by all accounts from my friend, is like sort of represents best what the sort of gallows humor of being like in an emergency room or in kind of some sort of trauma is. And I think that like, you know, similarly, like the Pit says a lot of really true things about our current medical system in America and its many, many, many shortcomings, and the particularly unique struggles that medical professionals are having now in our hyper-politicized world and post-COVID, right? And like, that is what that show is trying to do. It is not trying to teach you science. It is trying to make you empathize more with the people who like work for such terrible hours, often terrible pay a lot of the time, to like quite literally save our lives. And so when thinking about your own stories and kind of like what the things that you want to convey are, think about like what's true. So for me, like to use Desperate Hollow as an example. So for those of you that don't know, Desperate Hollow is my queer outlaw Western that is going to start publishing for Plus Pals on our Patreon in July, I think, if all goes well. So I'm very, very excited about that. And I did like a ton of research, right? Like I read all of this stuff about what life was like in the Wild West and all of that kind of stuff. I've got this fantastic book that I highly recommend to everybody. I've pulled this out on streams before. Oh God, all my books are about to fall down. Oh God. But this book, Everyday Life in the Wild West from 1840 to 1900, it's a writer's guide. This is huge. And like, for instance, like one of the things that I discovered in this that I learned for the first time is that like the bar stools at a bar in a saloon would not have been a thing. You know, they just stood at the bar and kind of like leaned against it. And the idea of a bar stool is something that like definitely came like well into the 20th century. And whatever. I don't care. I have bar stools in my saloon in 1898 in my book because I want them to sit down and then dramatically stand up. Like that's something that doesn't really like matter. Is that something that like a Wild West historian would nitpick in my book? Absolutely. There's a million things that they can nitpick, but I'm not trying to teach you about the Wild West. I'm trying to tell a story that's true, which is that like the Wild West was much more queer and full of people of color and, you know, diverse than we think. And that also, you know, Westerns are just like a great sphere in which to like explore themes of like masculinity and violence. And so like that's kind of what my book is doing in that way. What do I have bookmarked, Izzy? That's a great question. Marriage and family, apparently. And sanitation and bathing habits. I think this is just where I was last reading. Oh yeah, pie safes. That's a thing. A safe for your pie. It's a little cabinet for your pie. Like most of the stuff, I highlighted so much stuff in here. None of it's in the book. It doesn't matter. Oh no, I just made my screen dark. Okay, there we go. Bar stools come with mysterious strangers coming to town. Exactly. It's okay to be historically inaccurate if it's more fun this way. Lauren, do these come up? Is there a pie safe? Lauren, I demand a pie safe. There's not a pie safe, I'm sad to say. Maybe in book 2. Yeah, I do think that is correct, Izzy. Like it's okay to be historically accurate if it's more fun that way and if you're sort of getting at the point, because ultimately you are making fiction. You are not trying to like, I mean, obviously, like historical fiction as a genre is a different thing. And there are, you know, certainly things that are going to be sort of like a bee in people's bonnet around certain professions or certain circumstances or things like that. Like one of the things that like bugs me, which is like not important, is that like oftentimes in like action movies and stuff, you know, the hero's like hung by his wrists from the ceiling and his feet are off the ground, and it's like that's a really good way for somebody to die very quickly and or just like be completely unconscious. That's really bad for your body. And it's like they're always being tortured for like 17 hours like strung up like that, and it's like if your feet are off the ground, like there's so much pressure happening in your body that like you're probably going to suffocate, which is like a fun thing that I learned when researching something. I don't remember. I know a lot of different ways that people can kill each other and or die, just because that's what happens when you're a writer. So yes, yeah, Charlie says drama is more important than facts and entertainment because you're not teaching a subject, you're exploring a dilemma. Dramatization allows you more flexibility to hit the extremes of the exploration. Exactly. That's a perfect, I should have just read that, Charlie. That was a perfect explanation. Yeah, perfect summation. Okay, so yes, I hope various that helps. But yeah, I would just say you're never going to please everybody, and focus on what's true rather than what's accurate, if that makes sense. Okay. Izzy. Do you find after having produced your own shows that now you listen to other audio dramas differently than you did before you produced? Do you notice other things that you don't think you would have previously? Sorry, Charlie just said in the chat, when I was working on Joker, they stuck my desk facing the corner because all of the bloody reference images I always had up on my screen. Yeah, that's real. That's really real. Man, I spent a good amount of time the other day looking at photos of compound fractures, compound arm fractures specifically. A compound fracture is when the bone comes out of your body. I was looking that up for reasons that may or may not be relevant to future stories that I'm working on. But it was really gross. Anyway, yeah, I definitely do. I definitely do listen to audio dramas differently than I used to. I think it's quite hard for me to turn off my producer brain. Oftentimes I will be like, uh, very pie safe where I walk. Okay, I promise I will put a pie safe in the second book. I promise. Would have got published if there had been a pie safe. That was a problem. No sex and no pie safe. So nobody wanted to buy it. Yes, positional asphyxia. Thank you so much. That is what it's called. Yes. So I took medical admin. We learned all about them, and now I'm way too casual about discussing horrific medical things in the break room. Yeah. I will get a pie safe in there. I actually, in fact, know exactly how I'm going to get a pie safe in there. But yes, sorry, Izzy, you asked a question. Lauren, I sent Megan a pie. If you add a pie safe, I'll send you one. Okay, great. I'll take that. I will absolutely take that. Yeah, so I think it's hard for me to turn off my producer brain. Like I don't really care if like an audio drama is like technically perfect. You know, if like the sound's a little bad, if the sound design's like a little bit rough, like I think because I was doing those things when I first started out and I was bad at them, I'm very like willing to like give people a pass on that. Definitely if like the writing and acting is rough, I will have a much harder time listening to it. And yeah, do I notice other things that I don't think I would have previously? I think I notice like what someone is trying to do and what they should have tried to do instead. And that I think happens particularly around writing and acting, right? Because those are two things that I know best. But yeah, like sometimes, you know, I'll be listening to something that'll be a lot of exposition and I'm like rewriting the dialogue in my head to be less exposition-y. Same thing with performance where I was like, I know what this actor was trying to do, but like I think that they overthought it and were trying to do sort of like voice acty stuff and they should have just read the lines like a person. That also is just like taste though. But you know, if I'm really digging an audio drama, like that part of my brain will leave entirely. Like we were talking about Gabrielle Urbina earlier, like listening to The Harbingers is just like pure fun, you know? And so like, yeah, I think I'm still able to turn off my brain in that way. I don't know if that's not really like a good answer to your question. But I don't know that I can think of other things that I noticed that I didn't previously, because obviously it's been like a very, very long time since I've listened to an audio drama, having not made an audio drama. You know, like it's been 11 years since I listened to an audio drama without having the knowledge of making my own. So yeah, I'm not sure. Sorry. That's sort of a disappointing answer. But that's a great question. And I will be thinking about it and I will let you know in the Discord if anything comes up as I think of it. Okay. Oh my God. Time is fake. I mean, truly. Yeah. Time is fake and pie safes are real. So true. Okay, got some other questions here. Okay, great. Okay, cool. So you guys can see each other's questions as well. Oh wait, are these like do you vote on them? Is that what these little arrows are with these little numbers? Have you guys been clicking the up arrows? Oh, you can vote. Oh, that's so cool. Oh my God. Okay, I love that. That's awesome. Great. Okay. I was like wondering why you guys were talking about jams. I'm like, are we talking about jams when it like relates to pies? Like putting jam in pie? I was so confused. Okay. So for creators just starting to throw their work into the void, could you offer some guidance on evaluating pitching to networks versus full indie production, or what to consider if networks are the way one goes? Yeah, so jam safe, exactly. Something just to briefly sidebar about safes and food. A safe cracker. There if you were like doing like a bank heist in like the late 1800s, early 1900s, you would have two people that were sort of like the safe people, and it would be your Yeg and your Soup Man. And I might have them backwards in terms of who is who, but like the Yeg is the safe cracker and the Soup Man I think is your explosives guy. So yeah, that's if there's a pie safe and a jam safe, do you think there can be a cracker safe? I mean, there's certainly plenty of cracked safes. If you have a Yeg and a Soup Man. Yeah, that's just another thing that I learned at some point in researching something. Okay, so yes, Evaluating pitching to networks versus full indie production. Sorry, Soup Man. Yes, Soup Man, not Soup Man, Soup Man. Um, I believe that's what it's called. Yeah, so and Yegg, Yegg. Yeah, Soup Man. Uh, yeah, so I mean, like, I don't actually know very much about pitching to studios like Fable and Folly or Rusty Quill or so if one can't crack it, the other steps in to blow it up. I think that's basically the idea. It's been a while since I've read this book. I'm forgetting what book it was. Soup is Explosives. I just Googled it. Okay, yes, I got it right. Nice. I don't have a great memory for things. I want to be a soup man. I want that on my resume. I know. Like, how cool is that? Like, you're the guy that handles explosives and you're the soup man. Also gave me a lot of clips from the guy from Seinfeld. Oh, sure. Yes, the soup guy. A soup man loves to bowl. That might be a reference that the younger folks in the chat might not recognize. There used to be a band called Bowling for Soup that had a very popular song called 1985. As someone working on a heist flavored podcast, would love to see the book if you remember. Yeah, I actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I think it was in my nonfiction book club. And it may have been a book about the history of magic, honestly. I will look that up and try to get back to you on that because I used to be in a history book club many moons ago, but I think it was maybe the History of Magic book, which ended up coming in handy when I started writing New Year's Day. But to get to your question, Garrett. So yeah, I don't know much about pitching to places like Fable and Folly or Rusty Quill or oh, there's another one that I'm totally forgetting the name of right now. It's totally slipping my mind. Yeah, I think the big benefit for those is that you have access to that network's marketing arm, right? So you have sort of automatic cross promos with the shows that they have. You maybe are going to be on their Patreon and have access to that existing community. And you also will have access early on to like an ad marketplace, probably. Like those are kind of the big, and they're going to handle things like distribution and infrastructure and all of that, which can be really, really helpful. So it's like the administrative burdens can be lifted by applying to a network. In terms of the pitching process for those places, I actually have no idea because again, I've never really pitched to any of those. In terms of like pitching to bigger companies like iHeart or Audible or whatever else, nobody's really paying to have audio fiction made anymore. So like I would say make it yourself. That's always going to be my advice to people. The name's changed by the second in this economy, to be honest. Okay, yeah, that's fair. Yeah, like we did with Redacted, tit for tat cross promotion. Well, right. So like so I tend to be an advocate for like make it yourself, distribute it yourself, own all of it yourself. Because a lot of the things that networks provide, you can also do. Not to say that these networks don't provide value. They of course do. But if you, yeah, Realm is definitely a network, although I don't know if they take on shows. Like I think that well, no, they do because there are some shows that they've taken on. They've changed a little bit. Like I've pitched to Realm before, but in the capacity of like pitching them original shows that they would produce. So yeah, but Realm might be another one to look for. But yeah, like all of that infrastructure you can eventually build yourself if you have patience and a lot of time and are willing to spend a lot of time and your effort to do it yourself. Which tends to be the way that I go. So things like cross promos with other podcasts, like I just do those with whoever, like I'll reach out to folks, they'll reach out to me, we'll sort of put things together, we'll hit an impression count. It's the best way to get new listeners. It's awesome when you join a network and that sort of happens automatically, right? Like any new show that comes to Atypical, and I can talk a little bit about how we work. Obviously gets promotion across all of our shows and gets like priority promotion and all of that kind of stuff. Okay, with Rusty Quill, for example, there used to be a forum a couple of years ago and you could just pitch your stuff to them. They even answered with rejections, but still they answered. I mean, that's awesome. Yeah. And like Rusty Quill obviously has like a huge audience because of the Magnus Archives. And so that could be like a really great way to, get some listeners right off the bat. And then, yeah, with ad networks, places like Rusty Quill and Fable and Folly and Atypical, right? Like all of our shows. We work with Multitude for all of our ads. So it's like anytime we have a new show, even when it has 0 listeners, we are able to put ads on it, which is not something that typically you're able to do. That said, a lot of programmatic ad networks, which is mostly where you're going to be getting in fiction, getting host-read ads in audio fiction these days is exceptionally difficult, and not something that I would like worry about when you're starting out, because the chances of you getting a host-read sponsor is like very, very small at this stage. Usually the number I'm hearing thrown around is you need about 150,000 downloads a month to get that. So like the Bright Sessions occasionally gets host read ads now, but not a lot. Been learning a lot on this from my day job at a network, but not Audio Drama and Air, RBC, etc. Def recommend folks checking out those two if you're interested. Yeah, Air is great for all kinds of resources. And then I believe Art19, Megaphone, I believe Spotify and Libsyn, maybe Acast, Pod, what is it called? One of the other, not Blueberry, but it's like Pod Seed or Seed Pod or something like that, have ad networks that you can sort of apply to as somebody who's hosting their, TPA is the podcast. Podbean. Thank you, Izzy. Podbean. I was like Pod Seed and something like some small thing of food. Yes, Podbean I think has this as well, where if you sort of like hit a threshold of a certain number of downloads in a 7-day period, 30-day period, depending on what the qualifications are, you qualify for their programmatic ad program, which means that they'll insert ads. The CPMs are very, very low. So you're going to be making like, $7 per 1,000 downloads or something like that. So in general, like ads, you might have better luck with a network when it comes to ads for that, but like you can go it alone. So I would say like if you just have a single show that you like want to get out there and you're kind of like totally fresh to the space and you don't want to spend all of your time doing all this administrative stuff, then like I would look around at audio fiction networks and see who's accepting submissions. Atypical, for instance, like does not accept submissions. So we don't take on shows that already exist. We only come on board at sort of the idea stage. And we're not currently open for submissions for that because we don't currently have the money to fund anything. But other places might have submission guidelines, and it might be worth submitting. If you like want to potentially do a show for like multiple seasons or build up a podcast network yourself or have multiple shows, then like it might be worth learning all this stuff and sort of making sure that you own everything that you're doing. That would be my 2 cents. And then, yeah, in terms of like actually pitching, like I wish I could speak more to that. Yes, Various. So, yes, the Discord is paid $5 and $10 a month tiers. Super worth it though. It's a great time. I think it's a great time too. And if you want to join some free Discords for audio drama creators, there is the WGA Audio Alliance. There's the Audio Drama Creators Discord and the Audio Drama Writers Discord. I believe if you just search Audio Drama Discords, a subreddit post will pop up that will give you links to those. So you can join those, and I'm technically in those Discords as well. I'm not very active in them, but a lot of folks really are. The WJ Discord less so. You can just also search WJ Audio Alliance to join that. I plan on joining it eventually, especially to become a paid Patreon member. Oh, well, thank you, Various. I hope you do. And we also do have like our public chat in Patreon if folks like have things they want to chat about. Garrett, I hope that answered your question. As always, I'm taking like 12 minutes to answer every question. And the bonus, are there any beginner-friendly contests or jams I'd suggest? You know what? I don't have any idea. And this feels like something I should know. It's funny. I was talking to somebody yesterday. I was doing a consultation 2 days ago with somebody who, like kind of wanted to know where they could potentially submit for like grants or like startup programs, things like that. Yes, as always, I throw the most detailed questions, infinitely grateful for your answers. No, I appreciate the detailed questions. The more detailed a question, the more likely I'm going to answer it in a helpful way, honestly. So that's great. And, like I was telling him like, oh, well, like there's this and there's this and there's that. And then like I went to go get him the links and I was like, oh, wait, a bunch of these programs ended in like 2024. And so like it turns out my knowledge about those things is incredibly outdated. I believe the Podcast Book Club Discord does an annual collaborative AD jam, but I don't know a ton about it. I'm pretty sure this year's is already underway, though. Oh, that's great to know. Okay, Podcast Book Club Discord. That's awesome. Oh, great. You're submitting on Monday, Garrett. That's amazing. I would also say that when it comes to like kind of larger programs and things like that, like contests, I would subscribe to the All Here newsletter. I'm actually just going to grab a link for you guys so that you get the right one. This is Talia, the person who runs this, is like truly an angel sent from heaven. Like, it comes out every month, and it is a like comprehensive listing of every like grant and like contest and awards thing across podcasting. A lot of it's for journalists, of course, and for nonfiction podcasters, but there is fiction stuff. I can't even imagine how much work it is to put this all together. But it's a really, really great resource. So thank you, Talia, for doing that. So that can be a great way to like keep up with the different contests that are going on. I also no, it is not American centric. It actually oftentimes is like very paltry on the American side. So it's broken down by sort of things that apply the world over, and then there's a US section, and then there's like a Europe section, and there's also like incredibly oh, fantastic. Thank you for that Discord link to the Podcast Book Club Discord. That's great. There are oftentimes like province specific or state specific or city specific things around the world. The US hates funding media, especially lately. Exactly, Max. Yeah. So yeah, the US side has been a little bit paltry, but a lot of the international competitions and programs do accept, especially like sort of in the European English language speaking countries, they accept like any English language stuff. But also like it's that newsletter is not just for English language stuff. Obviously, I think for, you know, a lot of sort of Western media, the most common other language that I see is either like Spanish or German. But lots of people post cast crew calls and promote their shows in there too. Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah, an audio drama. So if you go to my production handbook, which you can find right here on Patreon for free, or you can go to atypicalartist.co/resources, I do have a list in there of newsletters. And one of those newsletters is a newsletter of newsletters, I think, or it's a spreadsheet. I think Lauren Passell from Tink Media put it together, but it's like a spreadsheet of newsletters. And so like that is a great repository of a ton of different newsletters. Audio Fiction Weekly is a great one to subscribe to as well for cast and crew calls. And I think that I do see occasionally there like the 24-hour sprints and things like that. So yes, I would say like the best way to kind of keep up with those things on a rolling basis is to subscribe to some newsletters. I would say All Here, Audio Fiction Weekly, and then We're the Heir to Wikipedia List of Lists. I love the Wikipedia List of lists. I think Audio Fiction Weekly is the only one I subscribe to. I'll definitely have to check the others out. Yeah, go check. It's like toward the back of my production handbook. It in like the sort of links resources section, like other resources section. Lots of newsletters on there. And I would say, yeah, Audio Fiction Weekly and All Here both do release very regularly. Audio Fiction Weekly obviously is weekly, and then All Here is monthly and incredibly useful. So yeah, that's probably the best that I can do in terms of where to find jams. And I hopefully that answers your question too, Various. Where do you even find jams to participate in? Yeah, I would say that. I would say the audio drama subreddit also is great, just in general. And also like if you ever have a question and like, you know, it's the first of the month and you're like, oh man, I'm not gonna be able to ask Lauren about this, you know, until this time. I mean, first of all, like any of those Discords, if you're in our pals Discord, you can always ask me. But yeah, the audio drama subreddit is just like a great place to go. That is really the community that like helped me out the most in the beginning as I was kind of trying to figure out how to do things. Like I would post questions there, or I would, you know, look at posts. And it was incredibly, incredibly useful, and it's still quite active. So I think that's probably like the best place to find those things. And then, yeah, if anybody here has any other resources that they want to share, please do so. Phenomenal. I'm caught up on the questions in the chat. We are coming. I'm going to go a little bit over time just because I started so late because of the technical snafus. But I did have some questions that folks submitted in advance. Oh, good. Somebody just asked Oh, Izzy asked another question. Coming at it from an actor's perspective, what can actors do to make things easier on sound designers slash producers? Oh, interesting question. I mean, my instinct is to say like that's not your job, and I do think that that's true. Like that is not your job as an actor. Um, if you are recording in person and you're wearing, like something like this or like a jacket that's making a lot of noise or whatever, like it is your producer's responsibility to make sure that you take those things off and that things aren't getting in the way. But I would say like, yeah, like just making sure that there's nothing that's ever going to like get in the way of what you're recording. And when it comes to like remote recording and things like that, I mean, when it comes to submitting for auditions, I've said this many times before. You guys are probably sick of me sick of me saying it. Read the instructions of the casting call and follow the instructions. Because people often get like we for our shows get like hundreds of casting submissions, and if somebody can't be bothered to read the instructions and send me an email that follows the instructions, and like, why am I going to be bothered to listen to their reel? That said, I do give people a lot of grace. Like I can definitely tell when somebody like didn't follow the instructions, but it's just because they like missed it or they like misunderstood the instructions or something like that. Like that's not a big deal. Show up wearing all corduroy. Got it. Yeah, like one of those like zipper suits, Reminded of the time the U.S. government commissioned a report on reports, which ended up recommending that a report on reports be commissioned to see if anyone had done it before. Wait, I need so much more information about that. If there's like an article or something about that or a Wikipedia page, I want to know about that. That does sound like something our government would do. So yeah, I think like just being conscious of anything that you could do, anything you do that might be slowing things down, that might make things harder for people in casting, scheduling, just like responding to emails with like some degree of alacrity. I never have the expectation, nor should anybody you ever work with have the expectation that you will respond after 5 p.m. or on weekends. So I unfortunately don't know the details, but they won a Nobel Prize for it. What? Max, we need you to write a report on the reports on reports on reports on reports. It's like Buffalo, 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 Buffalo. That thing that's like that's a technically grammatically correct English sentence is the word buffalo five times in a row. That's what that reminds me of. Also, I'm taking a tap class, and there is a tap move called the buffalo, so that I think about that every time that we do that move in class. Anyway, also, yeah, like just showing up on time, goofing off a little bit on set or in recording, I think can be like fun. Lauren Happy Feet Shipping, that's me. I'm not very good at it, but it's very fun. But like not goofing off like too much, but yeah, I think in general, like it's not really your job to make anything easier on sound designers, definitely. Like that is something that like your engineer, your director, or your producer should be paying attention to. And then when it comes to producers, it's really just like responding to emails on time. Like that's kind of it. But great question, and I appreciate the consideration, but like no, that's not your job. Like I as a director producer, like I want you focused on like being in the moment and giving a good performance and connecting with the other actors. I don't want you having to think about technical things at all. So yeah, like you're there to like, being an actor is so great. Like anytime I get to like show up on a project where I'm just acting, I'm like, the luxury of this. Like I just get to like show up on time. Oh, okay. I will say actually the one thing is like, I definitely never want my actors to be off book, both because like that's way too much work, and B, I don't want things to get like stale. And it's actually like a lot faster if an actor is reading and you can kind of be more flexible. Acting is great. It's so much better than being crew. Often so true. But definitely like read the script. Like I've worked with some actors in the past where it's like they show up for a recording and it's like clear that they're like totally cold reading it. And like, listen, if like, if you have a friend who's doing you a favor and you're not paying them, like that's totally fine. But like I've worked with some like actors that like, you've seen on like TV and stuff. None of the big folks that I've worked with that you might be thinking of, like they're not people necessarily, and they're not even necessarily on projects that you would have heard of, because there have been a couple of projects I've worked on that I'm like, I don't know that I really want to talk about this all that much. who show up and like, yeah, like just clearly haven't read through the script. Whereas there have been other actors who showed up. There was one actor that I worked with on something who was a Star Trek actor. We were talking about Star Trek in the Pals Discord the other day. He played, it's funny, he was in like 2 episodes of Next Gen and then ended up playing a completely different character in, I want to say like Voyager or DS9 maybe. Misha Collins showed up cold every time. Definitely not. No, Misha's like a wonderful actor to work with. He is so thoughtful, and yeah, just like collaborative and wonderful. Uh, but yeah, this one actor, Tim something. He's an older black actor who played a Vulcan. I think a Vulcan in Voyager or whatever. And like, you know, for me, I was like, this is an actor I've seen in a lot of things. And I was like this young director. And I was like, oh my God, like I'm so nervous to direct this guy. Tim Russ. Yes, it was Tim Russ. And Tim Russ, bless his beautiful heart. No, it's Patrick Page didn't read a script. No, like this is what I'm saying. Like all the people that you're thinking of, like were great. But Tim Russ, yeah, we worked on like one thing together for like 2 hours. And like he had taken notes in his script and he asked the most thoughtful questions. And like he was just such a wonderful, like I don't know, like I think that sometimes when you have those like one-off actors who are like kind of bigger names and they show up for like a day, like sometimes my expectations are a little bit like okay, like they're gonna, you know, show up and they will have looked through the script once and they're gonna give a great performance because they're professionals and they know what to do, but like they're here just kind of to do a quick paycheck. But like Tim Russ, I don't know why he sticks out in my mind. I think just because it's like, to me, he was just somebody where I was like, I've seen you on so much TV and it's just like, and like you just like took so many notes and made so many notes for yourself for like what was ultimately like a pretty small role. And I just like loved that. This guy Brigham, I see why his last name is Snow. Couldn't have been a colder read. I'm not Lauren, but I do hear my producers and engineers often say, God, I wish X would just drink some water before we record. Yes, I mean, definitely like when it comes to just sort of taking care of your instrument, like there's a lot to be said for that. Making sure that you, that you're hydrated, that you haven't had too much dairy, because that can kind of create like a kind of cloying mouth sound type thing. I definitely notice, like I literally just did it. Like I tend to like make a mouth sound right before I speak, which I hate about myself and have to constantly edit out. So like there are things that like if you are like really, really, really serious about voice acting that like, you know, you can kind of work on things with your instrument. But like as somebody who was a professional vocalist for a long time and had to do like, after getting sick, had to do like a lot of like vocal retraining and got, you know, the full scope and had to learn how to reuse my vocal cords and everything. Like now I'm sort of like, whatever, dude, like just show up and like connect to the character. Like if something sounds weird on the back end, like I'll tell you and we'll figure it out together. But like, yeah, that is like purely the way that I am. Like I just want people to be themselves. I never really am looking for like a voice actory performance. So that's a taste thing personally. I think acting is one of those things where you either have the knack and love it or you don't and you hate it. Unfortunately, I'm in the latter category. Very fair. Yes, I mean like acting is obviously like a craft that you can get better and better at. But there is definitely like a sort of an instinct that takes place in people that I think they either have or they don't. Oh, fascinating. This is a weird one. Chapstick before recording, yes or no? I've had this discussion with multiple people and they have opinions. I'm so curious, Izzy, what people's opinions are, because I have quite literally never thought about this. I mean, yeah, I mean, like I am addicted to my Burt's Bees. Like I put it on literally for like 5 seconds. And yeah, I don't know that it makes any difference. I don't think it does. And I think that there are a lot of things that like people are like very, very fussy about. Some absolutely swear by it, and I'm in the camp of it makes my mouth feel weird. That's also fair. I mean, if you don't like chapstick, you don't like chapstick. I mean, what that kind of reminds me of is the old menthol trick for crying. So this is not for voice acting because it's for on-screen acting. But putting like something like Burt's Bees or like something with menthol in it on your eyelids will like Vicks under the eyes, exactly, will like make you tear up. So that's something that people do. But like, I mean, listen, like do whatever works for you. Like have whatever like ritual or like thing that you like to do, as long as it's not like disruptive to other actors or to the production. But like things like chapstick, your beard, your glasses, like those things are not really going to make that much of a difference. Yeah. Yeah. I would say just like be yourself. Um, okay, let's see. Oh, any tips, resources for starting voice acting, websites, or master classes? And Garrett says, I just did my first VO, VA, or acting class, period, for that matter, through Closing Credits. It was a lot of fun. I actually signed up for 2 more in the coming months. Online, non-subscription required. Oh, that sounds great, Garrett. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, like, I would say that's great. I know Emma Shajarko from Wolf 59 and 2000 and Late and My Heart also does acting workshops on Skillshare. Skillshare. She's phenomenal. She's an amazing actress. She's a wonderful scene partner. She's great to work with. So like, that's a great thing to look into. Yeah, what Izzy said, regular theater acting also helps. I would say if you're able to take an in-person acting class, whether that's like a local college, or yes, she's also doing a panel at TAFCon. Shout out TAFCon. We're so excited for TAFCon. We're going to do some sort of atypical meetup there. It's going to be really fun. And I'm giving the closing talk, which I'm very, very nervous about. But I think it's going to be really, really fun. So yeah, theater acting is great, but I think that, yeah, just in-person acting, I think, and again, this is like a taste thing, and it depending on what you're going for, like I don't think that there's like a right or wrong answer, right? Like when I say like sort of voice acting, I mean like a lot of the stuff that you hear in like animation or like video games, like not all video games. Video games actually have moved to like very naturalistic acting in some respects, and so is a lot of animation, but like stuff that's like maybe like a little bit bigger, a little bit like more like, yeah, like sort of Pixar, like, you do voices and all that kind of stuff. And again, like some of that stuff is phenomenal, right? Like a lot of it is. I work with tons of actors who work in animation are absolutely phenomenal. And like one of the actresses I've worked with a bunch, Shelby Young, can do like a truly bonkers amount of voices. And it's like, and she still is able to do all of that while giving like a deeply naturalistic performance. And so like that is usually what I'm looking for. Like it's great to have people who can do lots of voices, but I'm always looking for somebody who like is going to be really natural, really grounded, just feel like a person, And I think the best way to learn voice acting is to learn acting. That's really what it is. So online classes are great, especially if it sort of gives you, the sort of starting resources for what to look for, and how to audition, all of that kind of stuff. But then like getting in person with people and reading stuff together, I think is huge. Like if you don't live in an area that has an acting class or you can't afford an acting class, someday I'm going to across the Atlantic and get to all the cons in person. Yay! Someday I'm going to go to London Podcast Show. I don't know, or the London Podcast Festival. I don't know where you are, but like someday. I've never been and I really, really want to go. Posting this again because I wanted to make sure Lauren sees it. Since I was last on one of these, I've made my first audio drama. It was a 5-minute thing I made with a friend for a radio competition, and we didn't win, but I definitely want to do it again with actual actors. That's amazing. And that actually, Max, that's almost exactly what I was about to say, which is that like, if you can't afford an acting class, congratulations. That is so cool. Or you don't have acting classes in your area or whatever, like there are so many websites out there that have scenes for acting class. Like if you just search like 2-person scenes for acting class, I guarantee you'll find like 700,000 websites where people have uploaded scenes or, shared scenes that they like to do in acting class. For my acting class that I met like Brigham and Julia and Charlie and like, so many people in, we had to bring cold read scenes every week to do. And yes, I would use those websites a lot. Or like if you just see a scene in a TV show that you're watching, that you're like, that would be fun to act. Like just get a couple of like friends together and just do it. Right. So tons of one-act plays for smaller casts are out there. Yeah. I pull a bunch of stuff from my monologues from those. Exactly. Yes. So yeah, I would say like, just get some friends together. And then I am going to recommend my favorite book for actors, which is An Actor's Work by Stanislavski. I'm a big Stanislavski girly. I will forever be heartbroken that my college copy of Stanislavski that I got in my freshman year and took like copious margin notes in throughout the course of my theater career in college got lost on my move to Los Angeles. And I've never gotten a new copy because I'm just like, well, maybe someday I'll find it in my parents' basement and it'll be that like I never actually shipped it. But that really I think is wonderful. Like Stanislavski, for like a little history of acting, Stanislavski was like kind of the guy in the late 1800s who was kind of creating like one of the first sort of really popular sort of Western modes of acting. And then that ended up sort of out of that grew Meisner and Uta Hagen and Method, which is also starts with S, I think. Strasberg? Is that the guy who did Method? And like this is, my poor partner has had to hear this rant from me 700,000 times. Everyone does method acting wrong. Everybody, every big actor that's ever talked about what method acting is wrong. The one exception to this, the only person who's ever, oh yeah, Stella Adler, also huge. Yeah, I mean, she was definitely like really the person who made method popular. The only person who's ever method acted and been good at it is Daniel Day-Lewis. Everyone else is doing it wrong. I really, really firmly believe this. And if you read any of like the original texts, then Charlie preach. Yeah, I think Charlie probably has also heard this rant from me before because we were in acting class for so long together. Yeah. So like if you're somebody who has a lot of actors that you admire who do method, like they're lying to you. What they're describing is just being kind of an asshole. That is not a real mode of acting. Strasberg is rolling over in his grave. Stanislavski would kick them in the face. Like, it's not real. You mean Jared Leto being an asshole isn't the way to do it? I know, shocking. And yeah, and I know I don't have to tell you guys that, but like every now and then, like someone that I really respect who like isn't describing being an asshole at all, will like talk about method acting, and I'm like, actually read Stanislavski. Like what you're describing is not method acting. Like read Stanislavski for the love of Christ. Yeah, cough, cough, Jared Leto. Okay, actually I'm going to tell a quick Jared Leto story because I find it so funny, especially because of what happened the first few times I told this story. So Jared Leto, notorious annoying actor. And when I was living in LA, I was talking to a friend who was into rock climbing. And there's this like one big rock climbing gym in Hollywood. I can't remember if it's in Hollywood or East Hollywood, but like kind of it's sort of in, central LA. And he, he'd rock climbed a little bit before, but he was sort of, rock climbing. And this guy comes over and starts like correcting him on his rock climbing form. And this guy doesn't work at the rock climbing gym. He, did this completely unprompted. My friend was like not struggling, but this guy just like starts unprompted, like correcting him. And like after like, 15 seconds of this, my friend is like, that's fucking Jared Leto. Like Jared Leto had come over to correct him on his form, which on its own is like kind of a wild story. But my favorite thing about this story is that then I was relaying this story to another friend of ours. Or maybe my friend was relaying it to them while I was there or something. But there was a second retelling of the story. And before I even get through finishing the story, the person I'm telling goes, the guy was Jared Leto, right? And I was like, oh, like, did my friend already tell you the story? And that person was like, no, that also happened to me. So like for a good like 2 years between, I would guess, like 2014 and 2016, Jared Leto would just like hang out in this rock climbing gym and just like correct random people's rock climbing form. Like this is something that like definitely like, a weird that it happened twice if I had a nickel type of situation. Yeah, this is the least surprising thing I've ever heard. Yeah, it's like it fits perfectly into like what I know of Jared Leto. But I just think that that's so funny that like it happened at least twice. Was he even good at it? Here's the thing. No one I've talked to who, because then I ended up telling the story like later on to somebody else, and they were like, "Oh yeah, that never happened to me, but I did see him at that gym." No one's ever seen him climb at that gym that I've talked to. So like, I have no idea. Anyway, I don't normally tell celebrity stories at all, but like, I thought that one was really funny. I like the way David Harbour describes method acting because I really can't tell if he's doing it correctly. I think he's just sad and blaming it on Hopper. That also happens sometimes. Misha Collins method acts because he played an angel and has continued to be an angel IRL. So true. So true. Yeah, Izzy, like Jared Leto really is mansplaining personified. Terrible, terrible person by all accounts. Whereas, yeah, everything I know of David Harbour, and obviously I don't know very much about David Harbour, but apparently he's lovely from the little I do know, and I can say with full certainty that Misha Collins is lovely. Wonderful guy, wonderful actor. And yeah, I think like approaches acting like, oh God, I was talking to my partner the other day about maybe it was Noah Wyle actually. Like we were reading some interview of Noah Wyle, and Noah Wyle was kind of describing acting, and we're like, yeah, that's the way that you're supposed to do it. Where it's like you show up and it is a job, and it's like it is a job that is emotionally taxing, and that like does involve like a kind of like emotional intimacy with the people that you're with in a way that like a lot of other jobs do not require. But like it is still just a job, and I think that like the actors like Jared Leto who like treat it as if it's like if you ever are working with an actor or like even a director who like treats acting as some sort of like mysterious, like holy thing that like, you know, needs to be treated as like something like other than a job. Not to say that it's not a wonderful job and that it's like, you know, creative jobs are kind of unique in some ways. But like that always to me is like a big red flag. Because it's like, that's the moment that somebody starts getting really like precious in a weird way about acting, that's usually a sign that like they're not going to be receptive to like creating a better workspace. They're not going to necessarily like respect boundaries around their work, I think is really like the best way to put it. And like that can take all kind of forms, from like the sort of just like annoying the person is like texting you at 7 p.m. and you're like just trying to live your life, to like the straight up abusive, which I think like we're all familiar with because we've like been around and have read things about the entertainment industry over the last 20 years. So well, especially with voice acting, that's really funny. Like you're standing in a box talking to yourself. Yeah, like yes, perfectionist too. Yeah, that's absolutely true, Charlie. Like anybody who's too much of a perfectionist is also like kind of a red flag. Yeah, I mean like there's such a careful balance to be found because like, you know, like we've talked about this before on like Bright Session streams and stuff. Like there was one particular episode that really sticks out. I don't even remember what episode it was, but sort of recording session that sticks out in my, Julia, and Andrew's minds because like we ended up just like sitting on my bedroom floor afterwards and just sort of like talking for like an hour and a half, and then going back into recording because we just kind of had to like stop and like I think it was a scene between Julia and Andrew, and like, and I'm saying all this because Julia said it on stream before, so I don't feel like I'm speaking out of school, but like Julia was just having like a really hard time like connecting to the scene, and she was like getting in her head and feeling like she wasn't doing a good job, and I was like, no, like the performance you're giving is amazing because it always is, and we ended up sort of sitting and talking, and like I do think that there is space that like has to be left for that kind of thing, right? Like it, like I said, it is an emotionally intense job. It can affect you in like a way that like maybe, you know, like any of the part-time jobs that I have where I'm just sort of like doing rote tasks is not necessarily going to affect me, right? And so I think that like there's an appropriate level of acknowledging that and of sort of like grappling with that as it comes up that I think is good even, right? Like I think it's good to talk about when things are like difficult, or I mean like, you know, you can't use your like acting session, your recording session, your dance set or whatever as like therapy, right? Like nobody wants that, but like, you know, I think that there is and obviously it totally depends on like who your collaborators are and things like that. Like, you know, with some of the actors I work with now, like if I'm like working with like there's a scene in Phantom Pulse that I think I'm going to play a part in. And I'll be working with Briggan, and like Briggan's my brother, right? He's like one of my best friends in the entire world. Like we talk every single week on FaceTime for like 2 hours. It's like how we start our week. So it's like, that's like, you know, the kind of emotional stuff that we can get into in a recording session is perhaps a little bit different than somebody I'm like working with for the first time. But like, even in those contexts, if there are other actors around, like I'm always going to be like very conscious of not wanting to sort of like cross any boundaries or get too personal or things like that. Plus, you've got to know how to work with the others. Like in the theater troupe I'm in, we benefited greatly from a fuck it all up rehearsal where we tried to just make everything go off the rails to see how we could keep the train going. That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. Charlie in the Twitch chat says, Brigand bleh. Ew, no, hate that guy. Yes, difference between process and indulgence. Charlie, you are just absolutely like coming through with the fire phrases, because that is exactly it. Yes, you cannot sit there and like indulge in like how important the work that you're doing is. But like, yeah, the process is going to be kind of messy, and sometimes it is fun to like do a take where like things are kind of like crazy, or to do a rehearsal where, you know, everything is fucked up. You know, for like for New Year's Day, like, you know, each of us will kind of like pour ourselves like a little drink, you know, and like, because we'll like usually record those kind of in the evening, and like it's also our time to kind of like hang out as friends. And so it's like there's definitely like flexibility to be found, and process to be found, especially with like really trusted collaborators. But yeah, if you are sort of getting like, I think the very important thing, like the thing that always helps me recenter away from indulgence is like, nothing is urgent, nothing is saving anybody's life. And like, I know art, I'm not saying that like art can't save somebody's life. Like, I have gotten emails from people that have said basically that. And art certainly has saved my life in many ways, many times. But like, that's very different from like, this person's bleeding out and I need to save their life, right? And so nothing's ever urgent, nothing's ever world ending. And I think just like keeping that in mind as you're working in creative spaces is super important, because especially if you're working in traditional Hollywood spaces, and I think that Charlie could definitely attest to this as well, the clock helps me stay away from indulgence. That is very true. I mean, certainly as a producer, like, knowing, you know, how much money I'm spending every hour on actors, I'm like, okay, like, I love the banter. We need to get back into the scene though. Like, we can't hang out right now. Yeah, like just knowing nothing's ever going to like be the end of the world. Nothing's ever going to save somebody's life in that moment. And, you know, you can just kind of like chill, and it doesn't need to be like a huge deal. So I think that that's like important to keep in mind, so that you don't track over people's boundaries too much. But then also, yeah, being open and vulnerable, and understanding that like, in order to act, you do need to like reveal parts of yourself, maybe not like in so many words, but like just in sort of like, it's gonna feel like you're revealing parts of yourself that you wouldn't necessarily reveal in like a normal work setting. So yeah, that's I think a good note to end on. One of the things that I think about most re Parks and Rec is what they call the fun run. After every take is scripted, they'd call for a fun run where actors could take the scene in whatever weird direction they wanted to see what happened. I know way too much about the Parks and Recreation production process. Yes, that's great. We also like to do a fuck rehearsal where we read through our scripts and put a swear word in each line to find the intention and emphasis that we're putting into each one. I love that. Yeah, and like that's a great example. Both of those are great examples of like, there are very few instances. I mean, like, this is something I constantly have to like watch if I'm ever in like a circumstance that is not like just hanging out with my friends, or like in the very few occasions I'm in like professional contexts that aren't related to like creative careers, where like in creative careers you can just say whatever the fuck all the time. Like, swearing is very normalized in sort of like Hollywood creator spaces. And obviously the saying anything anytime has been abused significantly in Hollywood. Like, I'm not saying that you can like, you know, there are obviously things that you cannot and should not say. But when it comes to, yeah, like swearing and things like that, like that's like, I'm assuming people in their office jobs are not saying like fuck every fourth word, whereas like sometimes like that is what it feels like you're doing in a conversation. So yeah, there are also just like certain quirks like that. And then yeah, the fun run thing, I oftentimes, you know, I like to try to get everything in 3 takes. And then on a 4th take, I will often like tell my actors, like, I'll either give them like completely opposite direction. Like, you know, okay, like, let's do this again. But like this time you're flirting with each other instead of arguing. Or let's do this again. And this time, like, you're kind of drunk, right? Just to like see what comes out of it. And it's, yeah, it can be really, really fun. Intent matters more than verbiage, for sure. Yes. So true. So true. So true in so many spheres. I think Scrubs did that well. Like, give a good one as written, then we'll see if anything good comes out of riffing. Yeah, exactly. VFX was very office job feeling and people cursed all the time. Okay. Yeah. So I also think cursing in general has gotten like more normalized in our society with social media and stuff, even though social media has like censored a lot of swearing too, which is weird. Another thing about Parks and Rec that I learned, well, just sort of about Mike Schur more generally. Mike Schur, I think, is like Mike Schur and Bill Lawrence. I actually think the guy who created Scrubs and Ted Lasso, Bill Lawrence, who also is an alumni of my same college. The two of them seem to create like really wonderful work environments. And one of the things that Mike Schur talked about with Parks and Rec that he started doing in Parks and Rec, and now I think does for all of his shows that I started doing in 2000 and late, and now I'm going to be doing, moving forward, is he gives every single character a first and last name, which is something that I hadn't done previously, right? If somebody was like Loop Group or something like that, or if it was somebody with two lines, like they would just be like, guy on street or whatever. Yeah. And I mean, you guys know how much I hate naming and how bad I am at it. And I definitely use a lot of those like name generators that like people put together 20 years ago that are still like those old websites. Or I'll just look up like what's the most popular name, in this state in this year or whatever. And I think that's really lovely. And the way that he describes it is like, yes, like in the course of the show, like this person in this 2-second shot in Parks and Rec with one line is like not necessarily that consequential for our day or for our show, but for that actor, like chances are like this is their first time like working on a TV show and having a line, and it's like a very big day for them. And so I don't want them to be unnamed. And I just thought that was such a lovely intention. And so yeah, something that like I've tried to bring into my work. There's an anecdote one of his writers shared about how they were having a conversation and he gleefully ran off going, sorry, I have to go make a list of names for a plaque on the wall. Like it was a thing he was so excited to do. But yeah, everyone on Parks and Rec was named in the credits. Yeah. You can really tell Mike Schur keeps a mental list of names he's waiting to put into things. I love that. That's so sweet. Yeah. So like, I think that's Mike Schur's lovely advice is a great note to end on. Thank you all so much for joining. If you're watching the playback of this and you submitted a question, I didn't get to it, I am so sorry. I will try to get to it next month. I always keep the questions on hand, but I do like to prioritize the questions in the chat so that I can ask follow-ups and clarifying questions and things like that. As an actor who's played Ho number 2, it means a lot to get a named character. Yeah, exactly. I've played Girl number 5 and all of that. There are a handful of recurring characters with the last name Lurpus. Oh yeah, I feel like I know that last name from Parks and Rec. Yeah, I just tend to name people after like people that I know in real life. Like I'll look through my contacts and be like, there's a last name, there's a first name, let's go. Thank you all, so much for joining. This was such a blast. I so appreciate it. Again, if you're watching on Twitch, then please come on over to the Patreon, atipapals.com, especially with this new Q&A feature, which, how do we feel, guys? I feel like this Q&A feature like worked pretty well. So I'm pretty stoked about it. I'm gonna let Patreon know that it was really fun. And thank you all so much for joining. And I hope everybody has an absolutely fabulous weekend. And I'm really excited to, see what audio dramas you guys come up with. Keep making those 5-minute audio dramas, those jams, all that kind of stuff. And obviously, like, always feel free to send me what you make. I can't promise I'll like give feedback and stuff, but I'd love to just like, listen and give you a huge thumbs up. And congrats. So go off and make stuff and have a great weekend. Bye, everybody.